So Red Sox Game Studios recently unveiled a public demo for their new cozy game, and it's not at all what I expected based on just looking at the tags of the game. This is a side-scrolling bullet hell game, but more importantly, it's a farm sim, and the most similar game to Stardew Valley that I've played in recent years. Even more so than something like Traveler's Rest, which is actually pretty surprising to me considering the art style and the setting of this game. Anyway, I recently spent some time with Doloc Town, and I'll be sharing with you both the good and the bad of this new farming simulator RPG. Without further ado, this is Doloc Town. Just to give a bit of context, Doloc Town's story is set in a post-apocalyptic world where technology ran rampant and went out of control. Humans and machines waged war for years, and when it finally started to fade, all that was left was scorched land, acid rains, and weary refugees. Your family was one of these refugees, and when the train you were fleeing on ran out of fuel, some of the survivors settled where the train stopped, founding what is now known as Doloc Town. Your family, however, scattered in the world and live your lives in a different place. But the nostalgia of the busy crowd, the image of his enigmatic giant robot leader Ponka, and the mysterious technology left behind by the previous generation beckoned you to return and uncover the mysteries of your childhood hometown. And that's how you ended up back in Doloc Town. Now, throughout the game, you're going to start rebuilding the town and uncovering its secrets, but before we get to that, I'd like to show you the gameplay first. Doloc Town actually has a very similar gameplay loop to Stardew Valley, meaning you go in rotations of working on your farm, doing quests in town and helping other townsfolk to unlock new features, and then you go off exploring to gather resources and discover new areas. What I like about Doloc Town though is that despite having the same gameplay loop, every stage has its own unique twist, making it feel unique and allowing it to stand out despite having similar philosophies in its design. For example, in the base building and farm management aspect, in Stardew Valley you can of course move and build in any direction, whether that's up, down, left, or right. However, Doloc Town is a side-scroller. So to circumvent that, they added a lot of verticality to the map, which is apparent in the exploration, which we'll discuss later, but most importantly in base building as well, allowing you to build up, not just sideways, giving you more space and allowing you to decorate in very unique ways. Another thing that I enjoyed about Doloc Town are the various characters you're going to encounter. They're all quite intriguing in their design, matching the game's cyber junkyard aesthetic, but most importantly, a lot of them have their own unique quest lines, allowing you to get to know the townsfolk and build your relationship with them. And in turn, they'll help you out in your farm and also in your quest to uncover the secrets of the town, like what happened to Ponka, or whether a mysterious technology exists that can revitalize nature to bring the world back from the brink of extinction. And then lastly, there's the exploration, which includes both resource gathering and the game's combat system. Resource gathering is pretty self-explanatory. You get tools to gather resources to be used in building your farm, and you can later upgrade these tools to access new areas. There's various construction materials to be collected like wood and stone, but then there's also junk, which are used for machines, which I'll discuss further in the progression section of the video. Now, if you follow the game's main quest or storyline, eventually you will receive an old drone. And the fun thing about this drone is that you can equip it with various attachments, mostly guns, so you can safely explore the river valley. This game's version of the wilds where there's a lot of resources, but also a lot of things that want to unalive you. The combat is pretty basic as far as the demo goes. You can move independently of where you're shooting, and when you get the jetpack, which allows you to dash mid-air, combat becomes quite fast-paced. Though we only really have access to a limited amount of enemies, so I can't really talk too much about difficulty or enemy variety, but looking at the trailer for the full game, it does look like it's going to be pretty chaotic and live up to its bullet hell tag. That doesn't mean I didn't have glimpses of these moments though, and I did end up dying once, which I thought was pretty fun. And if it's decently challenging in the full game with fun boss fights and interesting enemies, it might be enough to get some people to try out the game just for the combat alone. The combat in this demo version is pretty basic, no bosses to fight as of yet, but the foundation is there. Movement is solid, shooting is satisfying, and that's all that really matters for now, knowing that it's still in development. Let's move on to the progression system. Each aspect of Doloc Town's gameplay has its own progression system, from the farm to the town to even the combat. Now, the farm progression gets quite complicated, there's a lot of depth here, and honestly I was a little overwhelmed in the beginning. First, there's the actual farming of various crops. You start off with basic plant basins, an old water can, and a manual water pump. This gets very tedious though, so by utilizing the tech tree, you can unlock better technology, eventually giving you manual sprinklers, automatic sprinklers, and even connecting those to rain barrels so you won't have to pump water manually. But in order to actually craft those sprinklers, you need machines and workbenches and the various materials needed to assemble them, and here is where it gets quite complicated. To craft more of the advanced stuff, you would need to gather ores and various junk items, which can be refined into more usable materials through things like smelters or an assembly shaper. You then take those refined items, craft whatever thing you need, or upgrade your machines to make higher tier equipment. So the gameplay loop would be you doing stuff on your farm, collecting your materials in the river valley, fighting drones and mining, and then heading back home to turn those raw materials into something usable, upgrade the farm, rinse and repeat. It's a bit overwhelming, I know, but once you get sucked into that gameplay loop, 30 minutes turns into 5 hours very quickly. Not to mention that the save system is actually through sleeping, meaning that the game saves at the end of each day. And while you can take a nap for 4 hours to save in the middle of the day, that's still you sacrificing valuable time, so you're incentivized to think, one more day, I'll do one more day. And from there, Doloc Town's got its hooks on you. Now, I got very into this game, and while the endgame is not yet implemented, we do see from the tech tree what's eventually going to be available for us to do. Once you get yourself some trailers and put your stuff into various interiors in your base so you won't have to worry about things like acid rain ruining your crops and equipment, because yes, there's environmental hazards as well, you can start specializing in things like brewing your own beer and starting a bar, cooking your own food and selling it to the town, stuff that makes a cozy game really cozy. Again, unfortunately, a lot of what I wanted to do wasn't available yet, but these are really something to look forward to once the game fully releases. But all of that is just the farming progression. There's also town progression. Like in Stardew Valley, where you have the community center as a sort of big picture goal, in Doloc Town they've got some similar things going. First off is the botanical lab, where you can expand your crop selections by researching old world crops, allowing you to have more variety in what you can plant and make food with. And then there's the town hall, which gives you more recipes, but more importantly makes the world easier to explore by having you repair the bus stations and the cable car. Unfortunately, these transportation systems are not yet available in the demo, so if I wanted to go from one end of the map to the other, I'd have to manually walk, which was a massive pain in the ass. There's also the archives where you can submit new plans as collectibles, and then there's Treaty Port, which used to be the New World Center of Trade, which is now abandoned because of environmental factors. Now, the demo actually ends once you get Treaty Port up and running again through the main quest, which was extremely satisfying, by the way, showing us that yes, we are rebuilding Doloc Town. But the interesting thing is that after the demo ends, you can check the upcoming features that are locked as of now. And some of them show that we can actually explore new maps by boat in the full game, giving us more content like a desert region, which I'm very excited for. And if they're giving us new maps like that, I think it's safe to assume there's going to be even more once the full game releases. The last bit of progression is the combat progression, but again, the combat is not fully there yet, so there's not really a lot to say. We do currently have two types of guns for your drone, a speed gun and a heavy gun, but you can progress beyond an initial upgrade for these two as of now. I'm hoping that in the full game, aside from more enemy variety and actual boss fights, that we'll get more gun variety as well and more movement options like upgrades to the jetpack dash, but that's it for the demo. Overall, Doloc Town is very promising. It took me about 15 hours to go through the demo, which is actually a decent amount of content for people to try out. Some things I really liked are that the progression system has great depth. It's very exciting to see how your farm slowly evolves throughout the playthrough and you get more and more advanced tech as days pass by. I also really like how it can directly affect the progress of the town, and even in the demo, we can slowly witness Doloc Town get back to its former glory. The characters are uniquely designed and interesting, and the combat has solid foundations despite the demo lacking boss fights, which was what I was looking forward to the most. The cons I have for this game are mostly in the beginning. Number one, the intro leaves a lot to be desired. It kinda just drops you in the town with the small lore text. Hopefully they expand on it with visuals and more context, because it's actually quite interesting what happened to this world. But when I first started, I was just kinda feeling like, oh, this and that happened and now we're here and for some reason we're starting a farm. The other thing is the tutorial. Tutorial for Doloc Town is mostly shown through a basic image like this one, and for how complex the tech tree ended up being, I think they could have done a better job to slowly ease the player in. I was very overwhelmed in the beginning, and it wasn't until I set my own goals that all the systems really clicked with me, but by then I was already a couple hours in. Lastly, bugs. There's a ton of small nitpicky bugs that I noticed, like for example, some texts are not translated to English, some are even just straight up missing. This wouldn't be too much of a problem if not for some of the quest log being untranslated as well, so I had to use Google Translate in some cases just to figure out what I had to do. I had another bug where I opened the tutorial tab, which just freezed the game for me, and then I have this one NPC that I think I missed the introduction for, so I never got to know his name, and by the end of the 15 hours, he still had 3 question marks for a name, which was funny, but a bug nonetheless. Good game, good demo, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else the devs are cooking with this one. Hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more, and also thank you to our patrons for supporting the channel. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.